Okay, so what I'm going to talk through here is how to install one of these effects loops, right? So this is obviously my design in terms of the PCB layout, but it is actually the Metro effects loop circuit, which is the same as the Friedman, right? So Metro, as I understand this correctly, were the first ones to bring these out, and the Friedman loop is identical circuit, although with their own layout in terms of the components, and I've done my own layout as well. The difference I think from the Metro layout is that the send is on this side and the return's on this side, so it kind of follows. I thought of it logically in terms of following the signal flow. You want the send to come out and the return to come back in. In terms of placing, these are my layout wiring diagrams that are on the documentation share. I typically show how to wire these in, but the rule of thumb here basically is that they always sit in between the treble wiper. So you can see this is the treble pot here, treble wiper, and then through the loop, out of the loop and back into the phase inverter. So if you weren't implementing an effects loop, you would actually run an amp like this straight from the treble wiper to the phase inverter. This is my Jose Kelly project board, but that method there basically holds for pretty much any amp that you'll put one of these loops into. We always put these on a double pole, double throw switch, right? So two-way, on. And the reason for that, of course, is that you can completely bypass the loop. So when the switch is down like that, then the poles are connected to the middles up to this top one, and you can see it's just bridged across. So if you think of the signal flow, the audio signal comes off the treble pot through this wire into the switch, straight up, across, and straight into the phase inverter. So it's completely bypassed, right? It's as if this was connected directly from there to there. When it goes the other way, same signal flow into the switch, and then out of the switch you're going to go to the in on the loop, right? And that sets up a buffered signal to be sent out the jack, and then the return comes in. We come out of the loop rather than going straight back to the switch, which you can do, right? You can come straight out of here back to the switch, back to the phase inverter. What we've actually done is come out here, and it comes down here to this pot. This is a 250k audio pot, right? And this creates a return level. It's actually labelled return level on the faceplates. This is now like a global master volume, right? So you've got individual volumes on this amp. This is a 2-channel amp, volume 1, volume 2. When the loop's activated, this now becomes a global master. Comes out of the this global master, on the wiper. Now that goes to the switch, right? And then the switch into the phase inverter. When you put the loop in like this, and you end up with and you implement a return pot, what actually happens now is that your channel volumes become send levels for the loop, right? And this is the return level. So once you connect your pedal in here, or your rack, or whatever it is that you're connecting to, like I will actually connect this up to an H9, an Eventide H9, and on the H9 you can actually see a gain indicator, signal level indicator, and so this volume control actually becomes the send level of your loop, right? And then, as I said, this becomes the master volume. When the loop is out completely, this return volume pot is out of the circuit, right? So these volumes on the front are just like master volumes. So be careful if you crank these up, right? For your send level on your loop, you've got your loop on, and you're using this as your master vol, then you switch the loop off, the amp's going to be pretty loud. So just be be wary of that. Okay, just in terms of powering the loop, these loops use two LND 150 FETs, right, and they need to be powered. So you can see on my board here, I've actually got power pad here. This is the phase inverter power actually, where I tap it into. Some people tap it into the screen supply, but screen supply is pretty hot. So phase inverter here, depending on the amp that you've built, it's probably going to be around 360, 380 volts, somewhere around there. So you tap it off there, right, it comes in on this red wire into the board. This is the drop-in resistor. Right, so if this is 360 odd volts here, you need to drop the voltage down. And what you want to do is you want to measure the voltage on this side after the resistor, and your aim is to get that to 300 volts DC. Okay, so depending on the amp you're putting these loops into, you will need to adjust this to get it to 300, give or take. Sometimes 22k, sometimes 30k, 32k, whatever. Right, depends on obviously on the voltage here. If you measure the voltage on both sides of this resistor and it's the same, it means that your loop's not working, because obviously if you're getting no voltage drop, it means that there's no current being drawn by the loop, and that would indicate that there's a problem with the actual how you've built it. Okay, once the loop is in, it's time to test it, right, and get the set this variable resistor here, this pot, correctly, and I'll show you how to do that. First thing I should point out, which I failed to mention in the first section of this video, is shielded cable, right? So everything you run to and from this FX loop, the treble wiper to the switch to the board, and the board back to the switch, any pot involvement back to the phase inverter, always use shielded coax, right? Grounded at one end. If you don't, you'll find the loop will be noisy. Right? They are sensitive things. You've got to understand, right, with a loop, what's happening typically is that you're getting a very hot signal that's been buffered down to a lower signal that a pedal or your external effects can handle, and then when it comes back in the return, the job of the FX loop here is to re-amplify it and get it back up to the level it was before it went into the loop, so that there's no loss of volume. With that re-amplification, it'll pick up any noise that's been picked up in the journey, will be amplified with it, right, and you'll end up with a lot of hiss. So always good practice, don't be tempted to save time just by using normal wire. Always use shielded back and forward. This is why in this kind of configuration, with when you put the return level pot here, and in this amp, these master volumes on the channels are in the circuit before it gets to the loop. So as I said, they become sen levels. You want to crank them. If you're going to use the loop, bring the master down here and crank up the volumes so you get enough sen level, right? You've probably read this on lots of different forums and lots of different pedal manufacturers. When people say, why is my pedal so noisy? Make sure you get a nice hot signal running to the pedal, or to your delay pedal, or if you're using a rack, to your rack. If you can see the level, if it's got an indicator, then that's fantastic, right? But crank these so you get a nice hot signal running. If you run these really low, your volume really low, and then run the master volume high to compensate, it'll be noisier. So just something to be wary of, right? So this is now actually powered up and running. So I just want to check a few voltages, right? Show you kind of where we ended up. So this amp is running basically a plate voltage. Can you get that on the camera? Right, it's 491 volts. Earlier today it was nearly 500. So obviously been a slight change in the wall, the AC at the wall here. This phase inverter supply Right, it's 340 volts, which means that coming into the loop here, I've got 340 volts on this side of the drop-in resistor, and this other side, which I said we want to get to about 300. You can see I've got 290, give or take. So that's okay, right? It's kind of within, you know. If it was sitting 270, 280, I'd probably drop that resistor a little bit. I'd like to get it in between, you know, 290, 305. It's kind of where I kind of go with these things. The next thing I'm going to do is just show you how I get this level right. So this potentiometer here will actually affect the volume, or the level of the loop. You can do it by ear, right? And before I got an oscilloscope, that's what I did. I would play through the amp, and I'd turn it off. Put the return volume on max, obviously. Don't get caught with that trick, right? Make sure that's on full if you're doing this. And switch between off and on, and play. Just basically match the volumes by ear, which you can do. It's fine. There's no problem doing that. What I'm going to do here though is to show you how I do it with the scope. So I'm running a sine wave into the front of the amp. If you've seen the build video, which I've done for this actual amp, this Jose, you'll see that when I test the amp, I'm running a sine wave into it and then checking the output, which I've got here on the scope. So if I do that now, there we go. Bring up the volume level here. And you can set it anywhere you like, right? So here I've got what I'm looking at here is 27 volts peak to peak. It's running into a resistive load, an 8 ohm resistive load, so the amp's safe. And if I turn the loop on, you can see it's just about not even working. So let me bring it up. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually adjusting back and forward this pot on the loop to see. I'm just doing it back and forward so you can see what it does right on the scope. You can actually overcompensate, right? You can crank these right up, but you don't want to. What you want to do is you want to get it, so as I said, it was 27, that's with it off. So I'll just dial this in. It'd be about the same. There you go, 27. Okay guys, so we've brought the amp straight off the bench into the music room again. I've got my H9 here set in the loop, and what I've got here is my my Android phone here, and I've just got the H9 control app up just so we can check the the level. So as I mentioned, the master volumes on the front of this amp, which are pre the effects loop, or any amp that you care to put one of these effects loops in, this now becomes a SEM level. So you see as I play, it's actually affecting the input level into the H9. So what you want, to get a good signal to noise ratio, you want to get these right up, right? Not clipping, but at a decent enough level that you can see on here that you're getting. And you can hear the delay, right? So that's the effects loop is doing what it should do, sending out a buffered signal out to the pedal. Pedal's adding, this is a vintage digital delay algorithm on the H9, and coming back in. And there we go, the effects loop's up and running.